Whipple Family Misadventures Book 1. Welcome to the Parents of an Ailing Hedgehog Club, Chapter 12. It was an extremely cold day, the kind that defined Montana's winters. Even though it wasn't snowing outside, the temperature wasn't even close to getting above freezing. Heavy icicles hung from the sides of the house, and the wind only made it worse. The type of day where it wasn't feasible to send the kids outside. It only made Wade hope that spring would arrive early even more. He especially couldn't wait for when the snow melted and they could do way more stuff outside without worrying about how cold it was.
Either of you want to play a game?
Wade asked casually, taking out a small package that had been delivered that morning, and pulled out a container of Jenga and offered it to Shadow. He had another motive for this besides keeping them busy. It was clear that Shadow either didn't know his own strength or wasn't able to fully control it. Both possibly. And that was a problem, one that could end horribly if not properly handled. Someone could get hurt, and it was most likely that it would either be Wade or Silver who would be injured, even if it was by accident. When Shadow first showed up, he seemed almost feral, expecting Wade to be afraid of him, that he felt he might need to defend himself at any moment. The more they got to know him, the more clear it became that Shadow didn't know how to interact with others and had very limited social experiences. It made Wade curious if this was a piece of that. And what better way to work on it than in a game where you had to be extremely careful to win?
Can I play Dad?
That was Curly Silver's favorite word. Over the last few days, he found any reason to say it as much as he could. Not that Wade minded. It was almost laughable how little that revelation had changed about their day-to-day lives. Wade had already been acting like a parrot for quite a bit before they defined it. It just took this long for him to realize that. However, Wade had gotten this specifically for Shadow, but he also didn't want to leave Silver out.
Yeah, and you can.
He poured the wooden bricks onto the carpet and started to build the tower.
This game is called Jenga. You play by trying to remove a brick and then putting them on top. But you have to be very careful to not knock the tower over while doing it. Like this.
He carefully tapped on a few times until he found a loose one, removed it, and delicately set it on the top. As expected, when Shadow reached the tower and tried to remove one, the entire thing toppled over, coming crashing down. The hedgehog looked devastated, blinking down at the wooden blocks like he didn't understand what had just happened.
That's okay.
Wade said, picking up a few of the blocks, stacking them, and then knocking them down again.
It happens. Sometimes it's even fun to do that on purpose. But if you're playing this game, you need to be more careful and more gentle.
He said as he rebuilt the tower.
Do you want to try again?
A glum look on his face, Shadow hesitated and then slowly reached out to try again. This time the entire block tower shuddered, but didn't fall.
That's better, but even more gentle than that.
He smiled brightly as soon as Shadow successfully removed one of the bricks and placed it on top.
Good job, that was perfect.
Is this really a game?
Silver asked, using his powers to tap at the wooden bricks.
That's cheating.
Dude, that is cheating. No using your powers. And yeah, you think I would just make this up?
Maybe.
I'm nowhere near creative enough to do that. Why? Do you not like it?
Wade said, taking his turn as soon as Silver had finished his. Shadow and Silver exchanged a glance.
It's okay.
There's a lot of other games if you don't like this one. I had a roommate in college. Him and his twin sister, they played a lot of board games.
Because there were no movies yet?
What? No. Because they weren't allowed to watch TV when they were growing up. I'm not that old. Movies have been around not only longer than I've been alive, but also longer than my mother's been alive.
How old are you?
How old do you think I am? And Silver, don't tell him.
The darker hedgehog contemplated this for several seconds, carefully looking him up and down.
60?
Wade was horrified, and he wasn't sure if Shadow really thought he was that old or if he just pulled that number out randomly. It made him want to carefully look over all his life choices to make sure he wasn't acting like someone who was in their 60s.
Oh my gosh, I'm only 38.
How old is that for a human?
38 is not old. That's almost middle-aged. But 60 is approaching elderly. Wait, how old are you two going to live to? Like, do either of you know your average lifespan?
Neither of them did. That was a problem with the fact that neither of them had met an adult hedgehog before. That was the wildest part of this entire situation. They didn't know that. They didn't know how tall they would get. It was all wild speculation. Silver rubbed his nose, glancing down at the forgotten game on the carpet.
Are these called board games because you'll get bored?
Different kind of board, and no, there are many different ones, focusing on different aspects. Some puzzles, some teamwork, and others on strategies. You'll see. We'll try some other ones.
Sensing that both of their attention spans have outlasted the game, Wade glanced out the window, noticing how the wind was blowing, the ice-covered branches waving back and forth. He hated to think of yet another day Shadow was spending without proper protection for his feet, only wearing socks.
Shadow, would you like to get shoes today?
Right now?
If you want, it would make me feel better, and I know you'd be more comfortable in the long run. And I'll be there. It won't be bad. Just in and out.
Can it just be me who goes with you?
Wade turned his gaze towards Silver, thinking about it. After the last time, he wasn't fully sure about leaving one of them home alone. But then again, Shadow wouldn't be here to fight with him, and Silver would have to get used to being here by himself, especially after Wade's vacation ended, and he went back to work.
Will you be alright here by yourself for about an hour?
The gray hedgehog nodded.
Can I watch a movie while you're gone?
Seeing as they currently didn't have a working remote, Wade planned to fix that today. He had originally planned that they could spend a few days without being able to really use the TV, but that turned out to be just as much of a punishment for him as it was for them. Today he had caved and set up another account on his Netflix, after spending an hour wrestling with the parental controls first.
I guess, but while I'm gone, I'm going to lock both of the doors. Do not open either of them to anyone for any reason. I don't care if the president himself comes through here. Do not open it. In fact, that's a rule now. No opening the door to anyone when I'm not here.
What if it's Tom or Maddie?
Seeing as both of them are still at work, I highly doubt either of them would be stopping by. But fine, they're okay, but only them and that's it.
How come no one else?
Because you don't know who it is. It could be a delivery driver from out of town or someone else who doesn't know about you guys. And I don't want to have to deal with that. So the doors stay locked.
Looking thoughtful, Shadow frowned.
How would he know if it's Tom or Maddie or if it's someone else?
Pausing, Wade realized he hadn't thought of that. Obviously, Silver could just look out the window to check, but both of them were short enough he was either had to stand on something or had to use his powers to be tall enough to look out any window. And if he did that, someone might be able to see him. It made for a bit of a problem.
I'll figure that out later. For today, don't open the door, alright? And don't forget your water bottle.
The gray hedgehog was starting to get better at remembering, but Wade had also noticed that said bottle had a tendency for getting lost under the couch or forgotten in another room.
Okay, Dad.
Wade picked up his coat and the rest of his outer gear.
And can you please take out the trash while I'm gone?
I did that 2 days ago.
And it needs to be done again. Actually, I think that's going to be your job from now on.
Why?
Because when you live in a house and are part of the family, you help out with the stuff that needs to be done around the house. I can't do everything by myself.
The gray hedgehog scoffed and slid down on the couch.
Fine. But what if after I watch my movie, I happen to forget?
Then I might happen to forget to give you dessert tonight after dinner. Well, see you later. Come on, Shadow.
After double-checking that both doors were firmly locked, and he added a few more logs to the stove to keep the house warm, Wade's left Silver bundled up on the couch to watch Netflix, got Shadow into the car, and left. As soon as they pulled into the parking lot and Wade shut off the car, Shadow took one look out the window and shrank back into the seat.
I changed my mind.
Wade sighed. He had half expected this to happen, but as he had already had an argument over if Shadow had to use Silver's car seat and had driven here, he didn't want to give up now.
We're already here. It will just take a few minutes.
When the Hedgehog didn't answer him, Wade got out of the car and slipped into the back seat of the car.
Are you okay?
I don't know.
How about you tell me how you're feeling right now?
Shifting slightly, Shadow scowled.
Why do you always want to talk about things?
Wade leaned back against the seat and made himself comfortable.
Well, because it helps me understand what you're going through. I can't read your mind, and I can't help you if I don't know. But also because sometimes just talking about something that's bothering or upsetting you is helpful. It doesn't always fix the problem, but it's better than keeping it bottled up inside.
Shadow cast a glance out the window toward a couple that was navigating their way towards the store.
I don't want to see humans.
You can see me right now.
Not you. You won't.
Treat you like you're different?
Shadow gave a tiny nod.
Okay.
Wade said, trying to think about the best way to go through with this, and decided to fall back on some of the therapy lessons he himself had learned years ago.
It's okay if you're scared. From what you've told me, you've been through a lot, and that's probably putting it mildly. And fear does have its use. It keeps us alive, but sometimes there's fears that are important. Like, I would never climb the side of a skyscraper because I'd be extremely afraid of falling and dying. And sometimes there's fears that we have to face, because once you face it, the fear loses all its power.
Shadow only stared down at the carpet of the car. Wade shifted again.
For you, what would be the worst case scenario if you came inside the store with me? What's the absolute worst that could happen?
They'll react badly to seeing me.
And how can we deal with that?
How?
How can we deal with that? If we can make a plan for the worst case scenario, then we're prepared to face it. What would make you feel better if someone reacted that way, or any other way that you didn't like or felt comfortable with?
The dark hedgehog thought for several moments, lightly scratching at his arm.
I don't want to talk to anyone.
Okay, then you don't have to. If anyone wants to, I'll just explain that you don't want to do that today. And then we'll keep walking.
He felt bad about the fact that it was nearly certain people would pay a lot of attention to him or Silver or Sonic. But it was something he personally had no control over. At least this was a small town and not a large one.
Do you want to take a minute to get ready and then go in?
It would have been easier to take Shadow back home, let him hide from the world as long as he wanted. But Wade also knew that no matter where Shadow ended up, he was going to be on this planet for a long time. There wasn't any feasible way he could avoid interacting with humans forever. He would have to start somewhere, even if just a few minutes here and there. When the minute was over, Wade got out and offered his hand. After a moment, Shadow took it and carefully climbed out as well. Wade had only meant it for help getting out of the car and was surprised when Shadow didn't let go and was all but clinging to him in a near-death grip.
I don't mind this, but please be gentle and don't bring fine fingers. I need those.
Oh.
Shadow started limping again, slightly, in a way that looked like he hadn't even noticed yet, almost as if it was a habit that he just slipped back into. Wade desperately wanted to ask questions, but every time he did, or even showed a bit of interest in that, Shadow would clam up and try to hide it, almost as if he thought he had to. Wade had very little experience in the medical field, but it didn't look extremely serious. He was putting weight on the foot, but even if it was, there was no way he'd allow someone to look. Wade only hoped soon the hedgehog would allow him to take a look, and maybe he could pass on what he saw on to Maddie. As soon as they entered the front door, Shadow froze, looking like he was taking everything in, from the racks of brightly colored attire to the registers in the front. Even though it was a small-sized clothing store, there were probably less than 20 people inside. He still flattened his ears and moved closer to Wade. It really made Wade glad this wasn't a large town with those massive stores of hundreds of people.
We're going to be fine. Shoes are over here.
He said calmly, turning towards the back. A minute later, he and Shadow were standing in front of a display of kids' shoes. The rack towered way over the hedgehog's head.
Any idea what you want?
He got no answer, only a look of overwhelmed.
Okay, let's start by figuring out one size first.
He saw movement out of the corner of his eye before he heard the loud voice, a lady striding toward them.
Is that one of those alien hedgehogs?
Before any of this had ever happened, Wade had never been confrontational. Back in college, someone he had worked with on a group project in one of his classes had thought his name was Wayne for over a month, and he had been too shy and embarrassed to correct the guy. But now, seeing that near panicked look on Shadow's face at the sound of her voice, he knew he couldn't do that anymore. Standing up and smoothly moving so he was in between the two of them, Wade stared her down. Unfortunately, it wasn't someone he knew that well, just some older lady who lived near the outskirts of town.
Yes, he is. But right now, he doesn't want to talk or interact with anyone.
I'm just curious.
I know, but so is everyone else. And he's not ready for that. Please, just give him some space.
He can't handle anything?
No.
Wade said. Maybe it was the fact that he was a police officer, or he was trying out the new firm voice that he had discovered. Got results when Silver and Shadow had been fighting. But it worked. She cast one last annoyed look in their direction and then slunk off. Returning to the hedgehog, Wade found he hadn't moved even the tiniest bit, like as if it'd been a game of statues.
You doing okay?
Shauna's voice had dropped back to being so soft it was barely audible.
Can we just hurry up and go home?
Sure, buddy.
Wade glanced up at the rows and shoes.
How about I find stuff in your size and we'll see if there's anything you like?
Close to 10 minutes later, they found a winner. Wade had been slightly worried that Shadow would just agree to the first thing he bought so they could leave, but was pleasantly surprised when the hedgehog decided that he didn't like the first set of options. Finally, Shadow had agreed on a pair of black and white shoes with red soles.
Those look great!
Wade told him after they'd been tried on and passed muster.
It matches your fur and everything. Let's get you some socks as well so you don't have to keep getting new ones from Silver.
It was tempting to try and get a few more items, but it was also hitting home that Shadow was reaching at the end of his rope. He had stepped way outside of his comfort zone for this, and Wade didn't want to push him too hard. He did manage to snatch a new remote, but that was it. As they were waiting to pay, Shadow all but returned to his clinging routine. Wade did notice one thing that was in room's reach and quickly grabbed it. A black and white soccer ball. Spring was still a few months away. The snow would be around for quite a while. And yet, he was already looking forward to more outdoor adventures with them. The most bizarre part of that thought was Wade realized he was already starting to think of Silver and Shadow as a unit, thinking that both of them would be there in the future, even though they hadn't been determined yet. As soon as they got back to the car, Wade started the engine. His mobile phone rang. Fumbling for it for only a moment, he quickly answered, seeing it was work calling.
Hey, everything okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Although if you find yourself with several free hours next week and don't know what to do, you can give me a hint with some of this paperwork. That would be helpful. But that's not why I called. You got a package from Washington, D.C. No idea what it's about, but it's on your desk.
Wade stopped. The one he'd been waiting for. Hopefully that would have the answers to this very strange mystery. Glancing in the backseat of the car, to his surprise, Shadow was smiling. It wasn't huge, just a faint ghost of one that flirted across his muzzle. But it was a smile all the same. He had taken his new shoes out of the box, put them on, and was admiring them, lightly kicking his feet up and down. It was the first time Wade had seen him smile in almost 5 days. What news would this package bring, and how would it affect all of them? Especially if it meant that Shadow would stay here or not, depending on what kind of person this man was.
I'll be right there to get it.
He said and hung up the phone.